My 3 children crowded around me at the long mahogany table, their eyes fixed on Mr. Reginald Crawford, the estate attorney, like he was about to announce lottery numbers. I clutched my worn purse in my lap, my 68-year-old hands trembling slightly, though I told myself it was just the cold air conditioning. "Mrs. Dolores Washington," Mr. Crawford said, his deep voice filling the room as he adjusted his reading glasses. "Your grandmother, Mrs. Beatrice Montgomery, has left her entire estate to you. The total value, after all assets are liquidated, comes to approximately $1.8 million. The words hung in the air like smoke. $1.8 million. My grandmother Beatrice, who I'd visited every Sunday at Sunset Hills Care Home, bringing her sweet potato pie and staying to do her hair. Beatrice, who always told me I had a good heart, even when my own children said I had a foolish one. Before I could even process what I'd heard, my eldest daughter Tamika shot up from her chair. "Finally, Mama, this is perfect timing. DeAndre needs $40,000 for his business. I need to pay off my credit cards, and Keisha's trying to buy that house. We can split this 3 ways, and you can keep whatever's left." My son DeAndre nodded enthusiastically, his expensive watch catching the light. "Yeah, Ma, you don't need all that money anyway. What you gonna do with it at your age? You live in that little apartment, you don't even drive anymore. This is like God's way of helping us out through you." I felt something crack inside my chest, but it wasn't new. It was an old fracture that had been breaking and healing wrong for 30 years. "Y'all don't even want to let me breathe first?" I said softly. "Your great-grandmother just passed 2 weeks ago." Keisha, my baby, the one I'd raised alone after her father left, rolled her eyes. "Mama, don't be dramatic. Grandma Beatrice was 93. She lived a full life. Now it's time for us to live ours." She leaned forward, her designer nails tapping the table. "You've always been so pathetic with money, living check to check, working at that grocery store until you were 65. This is your chance to do something right for once. Help your children." That word, pathetic, hit me like a slap. It was the same word Tamika had used when I couldn't afford to pay for her destination wedding. The same word DeAndre had thrown at me when I told him I couldn't invest in his 3rd failed business venture. The same word Keisha had spit at me last Christmas when I gave her homemade gifts instead of store-bought ones. Mr. Crawford cleared his throat. "If I may continue, there are some conditions to this inheritance that Mrs. Montgomery was very specific about." "Conditions?" Tamika frowned. "What kind of conditions?" The attorney pulled out a sealed envelope, the kind you see in movies with red wax and everything. He broke the seal and unfolded a letter written in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. My throat tightened. I could almost hear her voice. "This is a personal letter from Mrs. Montgomery to be read aloud in the presence of Mrs. Washington and her family," Mr. Crawford began. "It reads, 'To my beloved granddaughter Dolores, the only one who visited me every single Sunday for 15 years. The only one who remembered I hated canned peaches and always brought me fresh ones from the farmer's market. The only one who sat with me through my chemo, my dialysis, and my loneliest nights. You have a heart of gold, Dolores, and I've watched your children take advantage of that heart your entire life.'" I heard Tamika suck in a breath, but Mr. Crawford kept reading. "I'm leaving you everything because you deserve it. You've given and given to people who only know how to take. But Dolores, I know you. I know that the moment you get this money, your children will have their hands out. So I'm protecting you the only way I know how. This inheritance comes with one absolute condition. If you give away, gift, loan, or transfer even $1 single of this money to anyone, and I mean anyone, the entire inheritance will immediately be revoked and given to the Southern Christian Children's Foundation. Not a penny will go to those who would pressure you. This money is for your life, your peace, your future. You've earned the right to be selfish. Use it." With all my love, Grandma Beatrice. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking, counting down the seconds until the explosion. "That's ridiculous," Tamika's voice cracked through the quiet like thunder. "She can't do that. That's controlling and manipulative." Mr. Crawford's expression didn't change. "Mrs. Montgomery can absolutely do that. It's her money, and she's left clear legal instructions. I've already filed the necessary paperwork with the charitable organization. They're prepared to receive the funds if any condition is breached." DeAndre stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. "So you're telling me Mama's sitting on almost $2 million and can't even help her own children? Her own flesh and blood?" "I'm telling you," Mr. Crawford said calmly, "that Mrs. Washington has inherited money that is solely for her use. Any transfer of funds voids the entire inheritance." Keisha turned to me, her face twisted with anger and something else, something that looked like hatred. "Mama, you're not seriously going to go along with this? After everything we've done for you? After we let you babysit our kids? After we include you in family events? This is how you repay us?" "Let me babysit? Include me?" The words tumbled through my mind, each one a tiny knife. I'd raised their children half the time while they worked or traveled. I'd been at every school play, every sick day, every moment they were too busy for. And they called it letting me. "Y'all act like I had a choice in this," I said, my voice shaking. "Grandma Beatrice made her decision." "And you agree with it?" Tamika's eyes were wide, disbelieving. "You're choosing money over your own children?" Before I could answer, Mr. Crawford interjected. "Mrs. Washington isn't choosing anything. The terms are set. She can accept the inheritance with the conditions, or she can refuse it entirely, in which case it would still go to charity. Those are the only two options." "Then refuse it!" DeAndre shouted. "If you can't help us with it, then nobody should have it." "You don't need that kind of money, Ma. You've lived your whole life poor. What's going to change now?" Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the way he said poor, like it was a disease I'd chosen to catch. Maybe it was the way they all looked at me, not like their mother, but like an obstacle between them and money they felt entitled to. "I'm accepting it," I heard myself say. The words came out stronger than I felt. The room erupted. All three of my children started talking at once, their voices overlapping in a chorus of accusations and demands. Tamika called me selfish. DeAndre called me ungrateful. Keisha said I was dead to her. Mr. Crawford raised his hand. "I'm going to have to ask everyone to calm down or I'll have to call security." "Security?" Keisha laughed bitterly. "For what? So our pathetic mother can run off with money she doesn't deserve while her children struggle?" "Your mother is 68 years old and has worked her entire life," Mr. Crawford said, his voice taking on an edge. "She deserves every penny of this inheritance. And might I add, Mrs. Montgomery predicted this exact reaction. She left instructions for me to provide Mrs. Washington with additional support if needed." He slid a business card across the table to me. "This is a financial advisor who specializes in protecting elderly clients from financial exploitation. Mrs. Montgomery already paid for 2 years of consulting services for you." I took the card with numb fingers. Even in death, my grandmother was taking care of me better than my own children ever had. Before we continue, please tell us where you're watching from so we know how far our stories reach, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. Tamika grabbed her purse, her face flushed with rage. "You know what? Fine. Keep your money. But don't expect to see your grandchildren anymore. Don't expect us at Sunday dinner. Don't expect us at all." "That's right," DeAndre added. "You made your choice. Now live with it." They stormed out one by one, Keisha slamming the door so hard the diplomas on the wall rattled. I sat there in the sudden quiet, my heart pounding, tears burning behind my eyes but refusing to fall. Mr. Crawford waited a moment before speaking. "Mrs. Washington, I've been practicing law for 35 years. Your grandmother came to me 6 months ago, when she knew her time was limited. She showed me letters, text messages, voicemails, years of documentation of your children's behavior. She wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of." "Why didn't she tell me?" I whispered. "She said you'd try to talk her out of it, that you'd sacrifice yourself to keep the peace." He paused. "She also said that if your children reacted exactly as they just did, I was to give you this." He handed me another envelope, this one with my name written in Grandma Beatrice's shaky handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a short note. "Dolores, baby, if you're reading this, it means they showed their true colors. I'm so sorry you had to see it in such a harsh light, but maybe now you'll believe what I've been trying to tell you for years. You are not pathetic. You are not foolish. You are not too old to live. You are enough, just as you are. This money is your freedom. Take it and fly. Love, Grandma." The tears came then, hot and fast, running down my cheeks and dripping onto the letter. Mr. Crawford quietly pushed a box of tissues toward me and stood up. "Take your time, Mrs. Washington. When you're ready, we have a lot of paperwork to go through. And I'll need to give you information about accessing your accounts and discussing security measures." Security measures. I looked up at him through blurry eyes. His expression was serious. Mrs. Montgomery was very thorough. She researched cases where elderly people were coerced into giving away inheritance money. Physical threats, emotional manipulation, fraud. It happens more than you'd think. She wanted you protected. A chill ran down my spine. "You think my children would—" "I think," he said carefully, "that desperate people do desperate things, and your children just made it clear they believe they're entitled to your inheritance." I thought about my little one-bedroom apartment on Fairview Street, the one with the broken lock I kept meaning to fix. I thought about how Tamika had a key, how DeAndre knew I kept my mail in the kitchen drawer, how Keisha had my bank account information from when she'd helped me set up online banking last year. "What do I do?" I asked. Mr. Crawford sat back down and pulled out a legal pad. "First, we're going to make sure your money is safe. Then, we're going to make sure you're safe. Your grandmother anticipated this, and she left funds specifically for your protection and peace of mind." Over the next 2 hours, he walked me through everything. New bank accounts at a different institution, a security system for my apartment, a new phone number, the financial advisor's contact information, instructions for changing my locks, a list of estate attorneys who could help if my children tried to sue me, which, he warned, they might. By the time I left that office, my head was spinning. I clutched a folder full of papers and information, walking out into the bright afternoon sun. The parking lot seemed different somehow, like the world had shifted while I was inside. My phone buzzed. Text message from Tamika. "I hope you're happy. You just destroyed this family over money. Grandma would be ashamed." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I thought about Grandma Beatrice's letter, her words. "You are enough, just as you are." Maybe for the first time in my life, I was starting to believe it. I drove home in my old Honda, the one with the tape player that still worked, even though nobody made tapes anymore. When I pulled up to my apartment building, I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. How small it was, how the paint was peeling, how the steps creaked. For 30 years, I'd made this place home. I'd raised my children here after their father left. I'd stretched every dollar, worked double shifts at the grocery store, made miracles out of leftovers. I'd given them everything I had, and they'd grown up learning to expect it. Inside my apartment, everything was exactly as I'd left it. The worn couch I'd had since 1998, the kitchen table with the wobbly leg, the photographs on the wall of my children and grandchildren, all smiling like we were a happy family. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Keisha. "Don't bother reaching out to Ayanna and Terrence. I've told them what you did. They don't want to see you either." Ayanna and Terrence, my grandchildren, 7 and 9 years old. The ones I'd picked up from school every day for the past 2 years while Keisha worked. The ones who called me Nana and saved me drawings from art class. The pain was sharp and real, cutting through everything else. But underneath it, something else was growing. Something that felt almost like anger. I put my phone down and picked up the business card Mr. Crawford had given me. The financial advisor's name was Octavia Reynolds. I called the number. She answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Washington? I've been expecting your call. Mrs. Montgomery told me all about you. Why don't you come to my office tomorrow morning? We have a lot to discuss about your new life." My new life. The words felt foreign, but not unwelcome. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Grandma Beatrice, about how she must have watched my children treat me over the years and decided enough was enough. I thought about all the times I'd given them money I didn't have, taken on extra debt to help them, sacrificed my own needs because they said theirs were more important. Around midnight, someone knocked on my door. Hard. Insistent. "Mama, open up! I know you're in there!" DeAndre's voice slurred and angry. I'd heard that tone before, usually when he'd been drinking. "Mama, we need to talk about this. You can't just cut us off like this. Open the door!" I sat frozen on my couch, my heart hammering. The knocking continued, getting louder, more aggressive. "I'm not leaving until you open this door. You owe us, Mama. After everything we've done for you, you owe us." The neighbors' lights started coming on. I heard Mrs. Chen from next door yell, "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," DeAndre shouted back. "This is between me and my mother." I picked up my phone, my hands shaking, and dialed 911. But before I could speak, my apartment door burst open. The lock I'd been meaning to fix gave way easily under DeAndre's shoulder. He stumbled in, his eyes wild, and behind him, I saw Tamika and Keisha standing in the hallway. All 3 of my children, in my home, at midnight, with expressions I'd never seen before. And suddenly, I realized that my grandmother's warnings about desperate people weren't just precautions. They were prophecies. "Get out!" The words came from somewhere deep inside me, a place I didn't know existed. "Get out of my home right now." DeAndre laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Your home? Mama, you're about to be a millionaire, and you're worried about this dump?" He stumbled further into my living room, and I could smell the liquor on him from where I sat. Tamika and Keisha filed in behind him, closing the broken door as much as they could. "We just want to talk," Tamika said, but her voice had that edge to it, the one she used when she was about to demand something. "Mama, you're not thinking clearly. That lawyer got in your head." "Mrs. Washington? It's Officer Martinez. Are you all right?" The police. Mrs. Chen had actually called them. I stood up on shaky legs and moved toward the door, but DeAndre blocked my path. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't embarrass this family like that." "Embarrass?" The word came out sharp. "You just broke into my apartment at midnight and you're worried about embarrassment?" Keisha stepped forward, her face softening into an expression I recognized, the one she used when she wanted something and thought sweetness would work. "Nana, please. We're not trying to scare you. We're family. We just need you to understand how this looks. You have all this money and your own children are struggling." "Mrs. Washington!" Officer Martinez's voice was louder now, more insistent. I pushed past DeAndre, and this time he let me go. I opened the door to find 2 police officers standing there, their hands resting near their belts. Officer Martinez, whose name tag I could now see clearly, was a black woman about Tamika's age. The other officer, a younger Hispanic man, had his radio in his hand. "Ma'am, we got a call about a disturbance," Officer Martinez said, her eyes moving past me to scan my apartment. "Is everything all right?" "My son broke my door down," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I want him out." "Mama," DeAndre started, but Officer Martinez held up her hand. "Sir, step outside, please. All of you." "This is ridiculous," Tamika said. "We're her children. We have a right to talk to our mother." "Not by breaking into her home, you don't," the other officer said. "Outside, now." I watched my children file out into the hallway, their faces a mixture of anger and disbelief. The neighbors were all in their doorways now. Mrs. Chen, old Mr. Fletcher from upstairs, the young couple from 3B whose names I could never remember. Officer Martinez stayed with me while her partner talked to my children outside. She looked at my broken door, then at me. "Mrs. Washington, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you afraid of your children?" The question hung in the air. Was I afraid? I thought about the look in DeAndre's eyes, the way they'd all converged on my apartment like I was prey. "I don't know," I whispered. "I never thought I would be, but tonight—" She nodded slowly. "My grandmother went through something similar. Inheritance dispute. Her children tried everything to get her money." She pulled out a card. "This is the number for Adult Protective Services. I'm also going to file a report about the break-in. You can press charges if you want to." Press charges. Against my own son. Against the baby boy I'd rocked to sleep. Whose scraped knees I'd bandaged. Whose graduation I'd cheered at. "I need to think," I said. "I understand, but Mrs. Washington, get that door fixed first thing tomorrow. And maybe consider staying somewhere else tonight." After the police left with a warning to my children to stay away, I sat in my apartment with the broken door, unable to move. Mrs. Chen knocked softly around 1 a.m. "Dolores, honey, you come stay with me tonight," she said. "I have the spare room. You shouldn't be here with that door like that." I'd lived next to Mrs. Chen for 15 years, ever since she'd moved from California after her husband died. We'd shared meals, watched each other's mail when we traveled, sat together during hurricanes. But we'd never been more than friendly neighbors. "I don't want to impose," I started. "Impose? Girl, after what I just witnessed, you're staying with me. Get your things." Something about her no-nonsense tone made me want to cry. I packed a small bag and followed her next door. Her apartment smelled like ginger tea and had pictures of her grandchildren on every surface. "Sit down," she said, pointing to her couch. "I'm making you chamomile tea, and then you're going to tell me what's really going on." So I did. I told her everything, about Grandma Beatrice's inheritance, the conditions, my children's reaction, the meeting with Mr. Crawford. She listened without interrupting, her face growing more troubled as I spoke. "Dolores, I'm going to tell you something I should have told you years ago," she said when I finished. "Your children have been using you. I've watched them come by here, always with their hands out, always with some emergency that you had to solve. And I've watched you give and give until you had nothing left." "They're my children," I said weakly. "And you're their mother, not their ATM machine." She set down her teacup with more force than necessary. "My daughter tried the same thing with me. That's why I moved out here, to get away from her constant demands. Best decision I ever made. Now we have a real relationship instead of a transaction." I spent that night in Mrs. Chen's spare room, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Around 3 a.m., my phone started buzzing with text messages. I made the mistake of looking. "Tamika, you're choosing strangers over your family. I hope you can live with that." Keisha, "The kids are crying, asking why Nana doesn't love them anymore. Hope your money keeps you warm at night." DeAndre, "That lawyer put a hex on you. You're not thinking right. When you come to your senses, don't come crying to us." I turned off my phone and finally fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, I met with Octavia Reynolds, the financial advisor. Her office was in a nice building downtown, with big windows that looked out over the city. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her early 40s, with natural hair styled in a beautiful twist-out and a smile that seemed genuine. "Mrs. Washington, first let me say how sorry I am about your grandmother," she said, shaking my hand. "Mrs. Montgomery and I spoke several times before she passed. She was quite a woman." "You knew her?" She interviewed 5 different financial advisors before choosing me. She wanted someone who understood family exploitation dynamics, particularly in elderly Black women. Octavia gestured to a chair. She told me about your children. She was very worried about what would happen after she passed. Before we continue, quick question. What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Over the next hour, Octavia walked me through everything. She'd already set up new accounts in my name at a bank my children didn't know about. She'd arranged for my Social Security and pension to be redirected. She'd even found a locksmith who could come that afternoon to fix my door and install a security system. "Now let's talk about your living situation," she said. "That apartment isn't safe anymore, not after last night. Have you considered moving?" Moving? The thought hadn't even occurred to me. I'd lived in that apartment for 30 years. "Mrs. Washington, may I call you Dolores?" When I nodded, she continued. "Dolores, you have $1.8 million. You can afford a safer place, somewhere your children don't have access to, somewhere you can actually enjoy your life." "I wouldn't even know where to start," I admitted. She smiled. "That's what I'm here for. But first, there's something else we need to discuss. Your grandmother left a letter with me too, separate from the one in the lawyer's office. She asked me to give it to you only if your children reacted badly." She handed me an envelope. Inside was another note in Grandma Beatrice's handwriting, but this one was longer. "Dolores, my sweet girl. If Octavia is giving you this letter, it means your children showed you who they really are. I know it hurts. I know you want to believe the best in them because that's who you are. You see the good in everyone. But baby, there comes a time when you have to see people clearly, even when it breaks your heart. I've put aside money for you to start over if you need to. Octavia will help you find a new place, somewhere safe and peaceful. I want you to know that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Your children are grown. They have made their choices. Now it's time for you to make yours. Also, I've left instructions with Pastor Williams at New Hope Baptist. He knows about your situation. If you need spiritual guidance or support, he's expecting you. And Dolores, please don't isolate yourself. You have people who care about you, real friends who've watched you give until you had nothing left. Let them help you now. You deserve joy, Dolores. You deserve peace. You deserve to wake up without dread in your stomach. Take this gift I've given you and build a life that makes you smile. That's all I ever wanted for you. With all my love, Grandma Beatrice. P.S. I've also set aside $50,000 for each of your grandchildren, to be given to them when they turn 25, managed by a trustee. They'll never go without, but they'll learn that money comes from work and wisdom, not manipulation. Your children don't know about this. Let's keep it that way." I couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down my face, dripping onto the letter. Grandma Beatrice had thought of everything, even my grandchildren, even my grief. "She really loved you," Octavia said softly. "She came in here 3 times, making sure every detail was perfect. She said you'd given your whole life to others, and she wanted your final years to be yours." "I'm 68 years old," I said, my voice cracking. "How many final years do I even have?" "My grandmother lived to 97, Octavia said. "That's almost 30 years. 30 years of peace, of doing what you want, of not being anyone's backup plan or ATM machine. 30 years of life, Dolores. Real life." Something shifted in my chest, like a door opening that I'd kept locked for decades. "Where do we start?" I asked. Octavia pulled out a folder. "First, we're getting you safe. Then, we're getting you strong. And then, we're getting you free." By the end of that day, I had a new bank account, a meeting scheduled with a realtor and a locksmith coming to my apartment. Octavia drove me back to Mrs. Chen's building. I'd agreed to stay with her for a few more days until I found a new place. When we pulled up, I saw Tamika's car parked in front. My whole body went cold. "Is that one of your children?" Octavia asked, noticing my reaction. "My eldest daughter." "Do you want me to stay with you?" I thought about it, then nodded. "Yes, please." We walked into the building together, and sure enough, Tamika was standing by my apartment door, which now had a temporary board nailed across where DeAndre had broken it. "Mama," she said when she saw me, her voice softer than it had been yesterday. "Can we please talk? Just the two of us?" "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Ms. Reynolds," I said. "She's my financial advisor." Tamika's eyes narrowed when she looked at Octavia. "So you're the one keeping my mother from helping her family?" "I'm the one helping your mother protect herself," Octavia replied calmly. "There's a difference." "Mama, please," Tamika's voice cracked. "This is tearing our family apart. DeAndre is devastated about last night. He didn't mean to scare you. He was just upset. You know how he gets when he's been drinking." "So it's my fault he broke into my apartment?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "That's not what I'm saying." Tamika took a step closer. "I'm saying we're family. Family forgives. Family helps each other. Remember when you needed help with Daddy's funeral expenses? Remember how we all chipped in?" "You chipped in $200, I said quietly. "I paid for everything else. I went into debt for everything else. And I never heard the end of how generous you all were with that $200. Tamika's face flushed. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," Octavia interjected, "is 3 grown adults harassing an elderly woman over money that legally and morally belongs to her." "Elderly?" Tamika's laugh was bitter. "She's 68, not 90, and she's our mother. She's supposed to help us." "She's been helping you for 40 years, Octavia said. "When does it end?" "When she's dead, apparently." Tamika turned back to me. "Is that what you want, Mama? To die alone with all that money and no family around you?" The words hit exactly where she meant them to, but before I could respond, Mrs. Chen's door opened. "Dolores, honey, I made dinner." "Oh." She saw Tamika and her expression hardened. "I didn't realize we had company." "We don't," I said. "Tamika was just leaving." "Mama." "No." The word came out firm, final. "I'm done, Tamika. I'm done explaining, done defending, done breaking myself into smaller pieces so you can take what you want. Your grandmother was right. This money is mine, and I'm keeping it." Tamika's face twisted into something ugly. "You're making a huge mistake. When you need us, and you will need us, don't expect us to come running. Don't expect us to take care of you when you're old and sick and alone." "The way you've taken care of me so far?" I asked. "When have any of you taken care of me?" She didn't have an answer for that. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. I stood there shaking, adrenaline coursing through my body. Octavia put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You did good, Dolores. That was hard, but you did good." That night at Mrs. Chen's, I couldn't eat the dinner she'd made. I kept thinking about Tamika's words, dying alone, old and sick, no family. It was my deepest fear, the thing I'd tried to prevent my whole life by being useful, by being needed. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mrs. Washington? This is Detective Angela Hayes with the police department. I'm calling about the break-in at your apartment last night. We've reviewed Officer Martinez's report, and we have some concerns. Could you come down to the station tomorrow? There's something you need to see." "What kind of something?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Security footage from your building's parking lot. Mrs. Washington, I think your children may have been planning this for longer than you realize." The line went dead, and I sat there in Mrs. Chen's spare room, my phone clutched in my shaking hand, wondering what else I was about to discover about the people I'd given my whole life to. Detective Hayes's office was small and cluttered with file folders. but her face was kind when she gestured for me to sit down the next morning. Octavia had insisted on coming with me, and I was grateful. My hands hadn't stopped shaking since the phone call. "Mrs. Washington, thank you for coming in," Detective Hayes said. She was a black woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. "I want to show you something, but I need to warn you. It's going to be upsetting." She turned her computer monitor toward us and pressed play on a video. The timestamp showed it was from 3 days ago, 2 days before the will reading. The security camera footage showed my apartment building's parking lot. Tamika's car pulled in, then Keisha's, then DeAndre's. I watched my 3 children get out and stand in a circle talking. The footage had no sound, but I could see their gestures, the way they kept looking up at my apartment window. "We've had the footage analyzed by a lip reader," Detective Hayes said. "Would you like to know what they were saying?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure I did. She slid a transcript across the desk. My eyes scanned the words, and each one was like a punch to the chest. Tamika. The lawyer said the reading is Friday. Grandma Beatrice had to leave everything to Mama. There's nobody else. DeAndre. How much you think it is? Keisha. Does it matter? Whatever it is, we split it 3 ways. Mama doesn't need much anyway. Tamika. What if she doesn't want to give it to us? DeAndre. Then we make her understand she doesn't have a choice. We know where she keeps her banking information. We know her passwords. If we have to, we can access it ourselves. Tamika. That's illegal, DeAndre. DeAndre. So is abandoning your children when you finally get money. She owes us. The transcript went on, detailing their plan to pressure me, to make me feel guilty, to use my grandchildren as leverage. They'd even discussed having DeAndre accidentally damage my door so they could insist I come stay with one of them where they could keep an eye on things. "We believe," Detective Hayes said carefully, "that when their initial attempts to manipulate you failed, your son escalated to breaking in. We found text messages between the 3 of them after the will reading. They're explicit about their intentions." She showed me more messages, screenshots from DeAndre's phone that the police had obtained. My children plotting against me like I was an enemy instead of their mother. "Mrs. Washington, I need to ask, do you want to press charges?" The question hung in the air. Pressing charges meant this became real, public, permanent. It meant acknowledging that my children weren't just angry or desperate. They were dangerous. "What would happen to them?" I asked. "Breaking and entering, attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person, conspiracy to commit fraud. Your son could face jail time. Your daughters could face charges as accessories." Jail time. I imagined DeAndre in prison, imagined visiting him behind glass, imagined the shame, the whispers at church, the way people would look at me. Then I imagined what Grandma Beatrice would say. I imagined her sitting across from me at Sunset Hills, holding my hand, telling me that protecting myself wasn't the same as hurting them, that they'd made their choices. "Yes," I said. "I want to press charges." Octavia squeezed my hand. Detective Hayes nodded and pulled out paperwork. "There's one more thing," the detective said. "We found evidence that your daughter Keisha has been accessing your bank account for the past 6 months. Small withdrawals, nothing big enough to raise flags, but it adds up to about $8,000. $8,000. I thought about all the times Keisha had helped me with my online banking, how she'd insisted on setting up automatic bill pay for me. How convenient that must have been for her. "We can add that to the charges if you want," Detective Hayes said. "But Mrs. Washington, I need you to understand something. Once we start this process, your children are going to fight back. They're going to say you're senile, that you're being manipulated by outsiders, that you're not capable of making decisions. Are you prepared for that?" Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. I thought about that question all the way back to Mrs. Chen's apartment. Was I prepared? Could anyone be prepared to watch their children try to destroy them? That afternoon, Octavia took me to see a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood called Oakwood Terrace. It was about 20 minutes from my old apartment, but it might as well have been a different world. Tree-lined streets, front porches with rocking chairs, neighbors who waved as they walked their dogs. The townhouse itself was beautiful. 2 bedrooms, a small yard, a kitchen with new appliances, hardwood floors that gleamed in the sunlight streaming through the windows. "It's too much," I said, even as I fell in love with it. "It's $185,000, Octavia said. "You can buy it outright and still have over $1.5 million left." "Dolores, this is what your grandmother wanted for you. A place that's yours, where you feel safe." I walked through the empty rooms, imagining my furniture here, imagining waking up in a bedroom where I didn't jump at every sound, imagining a life where I wasn't afraid. "I'll take it," I said. The next week moved like a dream. I signed papers for the townhouse. The charges against my children were filed. I changed my phone number and didn't give it to them. Mrs. Chen helped me pack up my old apartment, both of us moving quickly, wanting to be done before anyone found out. On moving day, Pastor Williams from New Hope Baptist showed up with 5 members of the church I barely knew. They loaded my things into a U-Haul, refusing to let me lift anything heavy, filling the truck with laughter and gospel music. "Sister Dolores," Pastor Williams said as we took a break on the curb, "your grandmother came to me about 6 months ago. She told me what was happening with your children. She asked me to look after you when she was gone." "She thought of everything," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "She loved you fierce," he said. "The way a parent should love, protecting, not using." He paused. "Your children came to see me yesterday. They wanted me to talk some sense into you." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell them?" "I told them that honoring your mother means treating her with respect, not treating her like a bank. I told them they need to search their hearts and ask themselves when they last did something for you that didn't benefit them." He smiled sadly. "They didn't like that much." "I'm sure they didn't. They're also saying you're being taken advantage of by that financial advisor lady, that you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years," I said. He nodded. "That's what I thought. Listen, we're having a women's ministry meeting next Thursday at the church. Sister Chen told me you might need some community, just women, talking, supporting each other. You should come." The first night in my new townhouse, I slept for 12 hours straight. I woke up to sunlight streaming through curtains I'd picked out myself, in a room that smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. No one had a key. No one knew my address except Octavia, Mrs. Chen, and Pastor Williams. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt safe. Over the next month, I started building a new life. I went to that women's ministry meeting and met women who'd been through their own battles. Sister Ramona, whose son had stolen her identity. Sister Yasmin, whose daughter had forged her signature on loan documents. Sister Keturah, whose entire family had tried to have her declared incompetent when she inherited her husband's business. "Girl, they'll try anything," Sister Ramona said during one of our Thursday gatherings. "But you stood your ground. That's what matters." I also started volunteering at the community center, teaching seniors how to use computers. It felt good to help people without depleting myself, to give because I wanted to, not because someone demanded it. 6 weeks after I pressed charges, I got a call from an attorney named Vernon Hightower. Tamika, Keisha, and DeAndre had hired him to sue me for undue influence and to have me declared mentally incompetent. "They're claiming your financial advisor manipulated you," he explained when I met with him. "They want the court to overturn your grandmother's will and split the inheritance. Can they do that?" My voice shook. "They can try. But Mrs. Washington, I've reviewed all the evidence, all the documentation your grandmother left. I've seen the security footage, the text messages, the bank records. Their case is weak, built on emotion rather than facts." He leaned forward. However, you need to be prepared for court. They're going to say terrible things about you. They're going to paint you as a confused old woman who's abandoned her family. The court date was set for October 15th. As it approached, I started receiving messages again, this time through mutual acquaintances, through church members who knew both me and my children, through neighbors from my old building. Your children are worried about you. Family is everything, Dolores. Don't let money destroy it. They just want what's fair. The pressure was constant, exhausting. But then something unexpected happened. My granddaughter Ayana, 9 years old now, showed up at my door with Mrs. Chen. Someone had given her my address. Nana? Her little voice cracked my heart open. Mama said you don't love us anymore. I knelt down to her level, taking her small hands in mine. Baby girl, I love you more than anything in this world. I will always love you. Then why won't you see us? Mama says you're being selfish. Mrs. Chen put a hand on my shoulder, steadying me. I looked at this child I'd helped raise, saw the confusion in her eyes, and made a decision. Ayana, baby, sometimes grown-ups have disagreements about things that have nothing to do with children. Your mama and I are going through something like that right now. But it doesn't change how much I love you. Do you understand? She nodded slowly. Can I still come visit you sometimes? I looked up at Mrs. Chen, who nodded. How about this? Every Saturday afternoon, you and Terrence can come have lunch with me. Just you and me and your brother. Would you like that? Her face lit up. Really? Really? But Ayana, this has to be something your mama agrees to, okay? I'll talk to her about it. That conversation with Keisha was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. She met me at a coffee shop downtown, her face hard and closed off. I want to see my grandchildren, I said without preamble. Every Saturday. Just them and me. No discussion about money, no involvement from you or your siblings. You think you can just buy time with them? Keisha spat. I'm not buying anything. I'm their grandmother, and I love them. But Keisha, I need you to hear me. I will never give you or your siblings money from this inheritance. Not 1 penny. If you can't accept that, if you'd rather keep them from me to punish me, then that's your choice. But it's not mine. She stared at me for a long moment. You've really changed, haven't you? No, I said quietly. I've finally stopped pretending I don't matter. She left without agreeing, but the next Saturday, Ayana and Terrence showed up at my door. Keisha dropped them off without getting out of the car, but she let them come. It was something. The court date arrived like a storm on the horizon. I dressed in my Sunday best. A navy blue dress Octavia had helped me pick out, modest but dignified. Vernon met me at the courthouse with a thick folder of documents. Remember, he said, stay calm, answer questions directly. Don't let them bait you into anger. The courtroom was smaller than I expected from TV shows. My children sat on one side with their attorney. I sat on the other with Vernon. The judge, a stern-looking black woman named Judge Clarice Winters, reviewed the case files with a furrowed brow. Tamika took the stand first. She painted a picture of a confused, easily manipulated mother who'd always struggled with money, who'd always needed their help and guidance. She talked about how close we'd been before that financial advisor got her claws in. My mother has never been good with financial decisions, Tamika said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. She worked at a grocery store her entire life. Now suddenly she thinks she can manage almost $2 million? Someone is clearly taking advantage of her. Keisha went next, tearfully describing how I'd cut off all contact with my grandchildren, how I'd become cold and distant, how this was so unlike the mother they'd always known. She's not herself, Keisha sobbed. Our mother would never choose money over family. DeAndre's testimony was angrier. He talked about the night he broke into my apartment, but he called it checking on my mother because we were worried about her safety. We just wanted to talk to her, he said, to make her see that she was being manipulated, and she called the police on her own son. Then it was my turn. Vernon walked me through my history. 30 years in that apartment, raising my children alone, the jobs I'd worked, the sacrifices I'd made. Then he asked about my children's behavior over the years. "Mrs. Washington, when was the last time one of your children came to visit you without asking for money?" I thought about it. Truly thought about it. "I can't remember. Maybe 10 years ago?" "And how much money would you estimate you've given your children over the past decade?" I'd worked this out with Octavia. The numbers were staggering even to me. Between direct gifts, loans that were never repaid, bills I paid, investments in businesses that failed, probably close to $120,000. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even Judge Winters looked surprised. "And did any of that money help your situation? Did it improve your life?" "No," I said softly. "It put me in debt. I had to work until I was 65 because I couldn't afford to retire. I ate rice and beans so I could help pay for Tamika's daughter's private school. I drove a car with no heat one winter so I could invest in DeAndre's restaurant that closed after 6 months." Vernon presented the security footage, the text messages, the bank records showing Keisha's unauthorized withdrawals. He presented statements from neighbors describing years of watching my children come and go, always taking, never giving. He presented testimony from Pastor Williams about my grandmother's concerns. Then he presented something I didn't know about, a recording. Grandma Beatrice had recorded a video message before she died, and her attorney had kept it sealed until this court case. The screen lit up with my grandmother's face, thinner than I remembered, but still fierce. "My name is Beatrice Montgomery, and I'm recording this in case my granddaughter Dolores's children try to steal what I'm leaving her. I've watched them use her for years. I've watched them take and take until she had nothing left. I'm leaving Dolores my estate because she earned it, not through greed but through love. She visited me every Sunday for 15 years. She cared for me when I was dying. She's the only one who ever saw me as a person instead of a source of money. If my great-grandchildren are in court trying to take this inheritance, know this. I made these conditions specifically to protect Dolores from you. You don't deserve a penny of this money, and if you had any decency, you'd be ashamed of yourselves." The silence after the video ended was absolute. I saw Tamika wipe tears from her eyes, but I didn't know if they were shame or anger. Judge Winters reviewed the evidence for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally, she looked up. "I'm going to be very clear," she said, her voice cutting through the courtroom. "What I see here is not a case of undue influence. What I see is 3 adult children who have financially exploited their mother for years, and who are now angry that their source of income has been cut off." "Your Honor," Tamika's attorney started, but Judge Winters held up her hand. Mrs. Washington showed remarkable presence of mind in protecting herself. Her grandmother showed remarkable foresight in anticipating this exact situation. The inheritance stands as written. Furthermore, I'm granting Mrs. Washington's request for a restraining order against all 3 children, prohibiting contact except for supervised visitations with minor grandchildren. She banged her gavel. "Case dismissed." I walked out of that courthouse into October sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in decades. Vernon squeezed my shoulder. "You did good, Mrs. Washington. Real good." Octavia was waiting outside with Mrs. Chen and half the women's ministry from church. They erupted in applause when they saw me, surrounding me with hugs and tears and laughter. "Let's go celebrate," Sister Ramona said. "First round of sweet tea is on me." We ended up at Magnolia's, a Black-owned soul food restaurant where they knew my name now, where I'd become a regular. Over-fried chicken and collard greens and mac and cheese that reminded me of Grandma Beatrice's recipe. I felt something I hadn't felt in so long I'd forgotten what it was called. Peace. That night, in my townhouse that smelled like home now, like the lavender sachets I'd hung in the closets and the cookies I'd baked that afternoon, I sat in my favorite chair and opened my laptop. Octavia had shown me how to research charities. I'd been thinking about what to do with my money, how to honor Grandma Beatrice's memory. I donated $50,000 to the Alzheimer's Association in her name, another $25,000 to the Southern Christian Children's Foundation, that would have gotten everything if I'd broken the will's conditions, $10,000 to the community center where I volunteered. It felt good, giving because I chose to, not because someone demanded it. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Ayanna and Terrence with Mrs. Chen. It was Saturday, our lunch day. I opened the door to their bright faces, their hugs, their chatter about school and friends, and a field trip to the Science Museum. We made grilled cheese sandwiches together, and they told me about their week without once mentioning their mother or the court case or money. After they left, Mrs. Chen stayed for tea. "You look different," she said. "Happy." "I feel different," I admitted. "I feel like I'm finally living my life instead of just surviving it." "Your grandmother would be proud." "I hope so." I paused. "Mrs. Chen, can I ask you something? Why did you help me? We were just neighbors before all this." She smiled. "Dolores, honey, you've been bringing me soup when I'm sick and checking on me during storms for 15 years. You've watered my plants when I visited my sister in California. You've never missed my birthday. We weren't just neighbors, we were friends. You just never let yourself believe you deserved friends who cared about you." That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't from fear or anxiety. It was from possibility. I was 68 years old with almost $2 million and no one to tell me what to do with it. I thought about traveling. I'd never been anywhere except to visit family. I thought about taking classes at the community college, maybe learning to paint like I'd always wanted. I thought about the women's ministry and how Sister Keturah had mentioned they needed funding for a shelter for abused women. I thought about my grandchildren and the trust funds Grandma Beatrice had set up for them, how they'd learn that real love doesn't come with conditions and expectations. I thought about my children and felt not anger anymore, but a kind of sad acceptance. Maybe one day they'd understand. Maybe they wouldn't. Either way, I'd done what I needed to do to survive. 3 months after the court case, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Tamika, handwritten, 6 pages long. In it, she apologized. She talked about how the therapist she'd started seeing had helped her realize she'd been using me her whole adult life. She talked about shame and regret and how she was trying to be better. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for anything except the possibility of forgiveness someday, when I was ready. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe not. But I'd keep it, because even in my new life, I was still a mother, still a woman who believed in second chances, just not at the expense of myself anymore. On a Sunday morning in December, I stood in my kitchen making sweet potato pie, Grandma Beatrice's recipe that I'd finally gotten right. The sun streamed through my windows, warming the hardwood floors. My phone buzzed with a text from Sister Ramona about our lunch plans next week. Another buzz, Octavia, sending me investment updates and reminding me about the cruise to the Caribbean we'd booked for February. I looked around my townhouse, at the life I'd built with my inheritance. Not just the physical things, the furniture, the security system, the new car in the driveway, but the real gifts, the freedom to say no, the peace of mind that came from boundaries, the joy of giving to causes I believed in instead of people who demanded it. I thought about Grandma Beatrice, sitting in her room at Sunset Hills, planning all of this, protecting me even from beyond the grave. "Thank you," I whispered to her memory. "Thank you for teaching me that I matter too." Outside, snow began to fall, dusting my little yard in white. Inside, my home smelled like cinnamon and vanilla and new beginnings. I was 68 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was free. That's all for today's story. If this touched your heart, please subscribe for more stories and drop a comment. We read every single one.